Let's talk with Dr. Stan Frager. From relationship problems to family feuds, he's got all the advice and expert help you'll need. Now, here's Dr. Stan Frager.
Hi, welcome everyone. Always nice to have you with us. I'm psychologist Stan Frager, and every Sunday night we get together, as you know, from 8 to 9. And with us tonight is a very special guest. He's part of our Sunday night family. Been with us for many, many years. Always love to have him with us. And it's good to see you, Dr. Eli Karam.
Dr. Stan.
Tenured Dr. Eli Karam.
Yeah, we can finally say that. That's nice. And back here, part of the Sunday night family. You gave me my start here in Louisville in this beginning of my 7th year. I'm originally from Louisville, but at the University of Louisville, and I'm a marriage and family therapist, and proud of that. And we're going to take all of your calls, and I have a bunch of emails tonight, everything family and couple and relationship related.
And so the lines are open. We welcome your calls. And just to make it even nicer, why, everyone who calls tonight, if you haven't gotten something in the last 30 days, we have a $10 gift certificate for Goose Creek Diner, or, ready for this, certain surprise people will get a $25 gift certificate to Veronese Restaurant. Wow. Dr. Karam's leaving the studio. He's calling in.
Those are two, yeah, I'll call myself. Those are two great Louisville institutions.
They are.
Call in.
Yeah.
So we got some technology here, too.
Oh, yeah, high tech. You can see us on, if you go to Ustream, the letter U, Ustreamed. TV. What is it? Or you can go to YouTube and find us. Yeah, that's
well,
right.
we've updated, so you
used to be
visual.
Ustream.
Yeah.
But the point is, you can watch it as a webcast. You can see it as well as hear it. I don't know if that's good or bad about that, seeing it stuff. But the point being, it's streamed. You can go to Frager.com and also radio and click on it.
Multiple ways to see.
There's no excuse.
I remember
tell
all of our listeners out there. So I am heading into my late 30s. I grew up listening to Dr. Frager on Sunday nights on WHAS radio. So me and him getting to work together and being part of the Sunday night family is really a treat.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it is. And you get better with age, my friend. So can we go to this first message, which I think will be good. And again, you can call in, and these are emails that have come in to my website, and we run, if you do want a visual, you can tune in almost every Thursday on Wave 3 in the Louisville area. That's the NBC affiliate. And you can watch answering questions around relationships, family life, and these are where these questions come from that we get in for that show. So the first one.
All right. Well, also the lines are open. 502-571-0970. We're in the 502 area code, 571-0970. Lines are open. We welcome your calls, and we've got some emails already.
Here we go. I have been struggling with relationship issues for some time now. I'm a very private and independent person and have never sought out help from an outside professional before. My parents always taught me to rely on family and keep it within the family. However, after the birth of my first child 3 months ago, my family is the problem. How do I find the right fit in a therapist? Should I come alone, bring my husband, or even try to include my parents? Please help. This one comes from Wanda in Louisville.
So usually we think about kind of the reverse. Is it a good fit? And here she's saying, how do I find a good therapist that's the right person for my family and for my problems? Great question.
Yeah, it's a great question because, even though we, marriage and family therapists believe in strength and health and don't see people as their problems, there's still a big stigma, as you know, Dr. Stan, on mental health. And some people, especially in a family like this that seems very kind of closed and secretive, that it's very hard to get help sometimes from outside professionals. So first part is to just eliminate the stigma and go out and it says your parents are part of the problem. So sometimes you want a sounding board, an independent kind of perspective on what you're going through. And you can always call a licensed marriage and family therapist. You can do that with the National Clearinghouse, which is www.therapistlocator.net. And what you find on there are marriage and family therapists. Any therapist, Dr. Stan can tell you, and I can tell you, should be able to talk to you 5 or 10 minutes on the phone so you can get a feel for them. And what you should tell them in that period is just the Reader's Digest version of what's going on with you, what your issue is, and then it's a dialogue about who should you bring in and when.
Yep, and then psychologists, we have the same thing, by the way. Kentucky Psychological Association will get you a variety of people. The point being that when it comes to mental health, there's a variety of people who are there to help. And most of them are glad to talk to you for a few minutes. Like, for example, I don't see small children under 5. Give me your teenagers and older, and we can talk.
Yeah.
So, and there's some who love working with kids. That's what they do, is they work with children. They're very good at it. And so you want to know that before you go to a therapist.
And you can usually get that information, therapist's website. It's going to have what their specialty is, and it usually has a personal statement, how they view people and their problems, and you should get a good feel from that. If their website looks kind of generic or you really can't tell what's going on, the best ones, you get a kind of a window into what the therapist is like. But you should always ask them, this is what's going on. What do you see? Like Dr. Stan and myself, too, are not going to be comfortable seeing small children. You should also ask them kind of their orientation on seeing families. Some people have a kind of individual focus, whereas marriage and family therapists, family psychologists are trained more systemically, and they are trained to incorporate different members of the family system at different times. So depending where you're at, you can ask your parents, and I always believe it's kind of easier to get a good feel for, as a therapist, for the whole system first, and then to see what's from there. But you also pointed out in your email, looking at it here, there's the birth of your first child. So we know in the family life cycle there are periods of great stress. So certainly there's a lot of joy. I have a 4 and a 5-year-old, but I remember those first couple months after they were born, that even though it was a joyous time, it was also a lot of stress. So
yeah.
It's not an insignificant that a therapist will kind of help you kind of navigate some of these obstacles of the stage of life that you're in. So you should ask the therapist, and then you should, if you think your family wants to be a part of it, certainly welcome them in. And again, any licensed marriage and family therapist is not only able to work kind of with you and your spouse, but also with you and your adult parents, kind of navigating those boundaries. So that's a really good question. And
as you indicate, Dr. Karam, the stigma of getting mental health help is still there for some people. It's like you would only go see a psychologist if you're crazy, which is ridiculous.
Right.
And one of the things we found was a problem in working in the military was that it was forever in their jacket when they come up for promotion and so forth. If it had down there, you saw mental health, behavioral health specialists, or had to go to the hospital for that, it would kill promotions. It's a shame.
Yeah.
Listen, that tells us 30 seconds. Again, the lines are open. We welcome your calls, 502-571-0970. Put you right here. Lots of free dinners given away just for folks who talk with us. I'll tell you, how much nicer can it get? 571-0970. I'm Dr. Stan Frager with Dr. Eli Karam. We're here for you. What kind of issues are you faced with?
Fine, Dr. Frager. You found Let's Talk with Dr. Stan Frager. Dr. Stan Frager is standing by to give you insight on issues that matter most to you. Call now, 571-0970.
Hi, and welcome. Always nice to have you with us. By the way, talking about these kinds of issues can not only be helpful to you, but trust me, it can always be helpful to a lot of other people as well. So it's a good thing to do. It's okay to do it. We were talking about stigma, and it really is a problem in the military.
It is, and both of us have seen a lot of military individuals and couples and families being so close to Fort Knox. And, people think, that you just have to have a problem to come in and see a mental health professional, marriage and family therapist like myself, or a psychologist like yourself. But that is not necessarily true. Again, we believe in the health premise that people are basically good and they're just stuck, and I always say, healthy until proven sick. But we won't ignore, a diagnosis or mental illness is staring us in the face. But I think of some of the military personnel I've worked with, and when they really have found the right diagnosis, whether it be PTSD or depression or something like that, it has been really a release for them to really treat it heads on, hands on, move forward, and stop fighting the fear of what will happen. So just encourage everybody out there, not just military. If you have been struggling with something, as we said before the break, there is no stigma. Go talk to somebody. And sometimes, as we know, just from going, as we say in psychotherapy research, just sometimes calling and making that first appointment, you go from demoralized to remoralized, kind of the instilling of hope. And sometimes when you've been alone in your head and you have not had a sounding board, an independent third party, which is a therapist can be, that, you have really sometimes blown some of these problems out of proportion. It can be really improved on fairly quickly by going to talk to somebody. So of all the research says that you got to go to someone you find credible. And that's, you should find the right therapist, as we said in that last segment. You should do a thorough interview. But the real thing that accounts for change is the motivation level of the client.
Well, what's interesting, for example, if you broke a finger, you would, you don't think anything. You say, well, I went to the hospital, they had to reset my finger. You don't give it a second thought. But if we had to see a counselor, then it's a whole different ballpark.
Right. So here's the next email. We get this one from Rita, also from Louisville. Again, reminds to call in. What's the number where they can call in, Dr.
571-0970.
All hour taking your questions. This is an email from Rita. She says, Dear Dr. Eli, I've been married for 18 years and have 2 teenage children. I care about my husband very much, but I'm not sure that I'm in love with him anymore, or even have much in common outside of doing things centered on the kids. I'm only 47 years old and feel like I owe it to myself to be happy and fulfilled. I am unsure of, however, if I can do that while staying married. What should I do, and how could a marriage and family therapist help me? Okay, so this is another really common thing, and I appreciate that, Rita. You might be in the bubble inside of your relationship at this stage of life you're in, heading midlife. Both of your children are heading towards launching, it looks like, so you're staring across the bed, and your husband is not someone you really know that much anymore, and you might be great co-parents, but you haven't really been focused on the relationship. So we see a lot of people at this stage, and they're discerning, do I hang in there, do I reinvest in the relationship, or do I do something that's going to make me happy, which might be not being in the relationship. So that is a tough one, and certainly a therapist. In marriage and family therapy, we have this new movement started by Bill Doherty about 10 years ago at the University of Minnesota called discernment therapy. Dr. Stan, discernment therapy, instead of working with the couple, in the couple, when you're working in marriage therapy or couples counseling, you assume both people are all in trying to save the relationship. Discernment therapy says, well, you're at this cross point. You're at this dividing line in the relationship. So it's going to meet individually with both members of the couple to weigh the pros and cons of what it would be like to stay together, reinvest in the relationship, or what it would be like to go it alone.
Well, I know there's some of the research indicates that in many cases, people wait too long to get help. By the time they come for marriage counseling, it's usually under pressure from one of the spouses saying, well, we've got to see somebody. The other part isn't, the other party, the spouse isn't committed to it.
That's right.
And the odds of succeeding at that point drop dramatically.
Exactly. You're at two different places on the continuum, a continuum between being fully committed and then being kind of out the door. And in the middle of that continuum is ambivalent, which is sometimes 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So very rarely, in my experience for the last 14 years of doing this and studying the research, are people at the exact same point of motivation. So a good couples therapist is going to be able to try to get the buy-in from both parties. But sometimes when you're really on the fence, meeting alone with the therapist and trying to figure out what it's going to look like, should you go it on your own versus what you recommend in marriage is very important, because you should not start couples therapy really being on the fence. You really got to push towards committing all in. Or, marriage and family therapists see it's a misnomer that in this field, if you can't save a relationship, that is a negative outcome. In fact, there's lots of people that come to see marriage and family therapists when they cannot resolve the relationship, but they want to disentangle the right way, meaning they have children together. Much of marriage and family therapist practices are working on co-parenting strategies, going through a divorce, how to tell kids about a divorce, and how to remain respect for each other as co-parents, what we call a limited partnership.
In 2 weeks, in fact, we have Lewis Winter, attorney Lewis Winter, and we're going to talk about family law.
That's great.
And Judge Joan Bauer will be with us from the family court.
Yeah.
And it's that same kind of thing. In fact, they require counseling. If you got children, you have to get some counseling.
Our former colleague at the Kent School of Social Work, Dr. Joe Brown, helped develop that very program you're talking about, which is called FIT, and that stands for Families in Transition, which every child going through a divorce and every parent goes through. And that is, while it's not therapy, what it is it's good psychoeducation about what you need to do as a family, because divorced families are still families. What you need to do individually, what you need to do with your co-parent if you're an adult, and what you need to do as a kid if you're a child under 18 to transition. So that's going to be great that you have that coming up in 2 weeks.
Well, a lot of times there's a lot of animosity. It ends on a note of, well, if we're getting divorced, I better have a very good reason for it, and they end up being angry at each other. Then they use the children to take messages. Well, if your father gave me more child support money, I'd be able to buy you nicer clothes, or they want to blame each other and so forth, and that's never good.
Yeah,
I mean, there's some basic things. It's amazing what parents will do when they're going through.
And no
divorce.
one says that in the beginning. They're like, "Oh no, we don't need that. We respect each other," and then we would never do that to our children, and then. Whether it be money or a third party, somebody has moved on too quickly. Parents or exes, spouses get bitter, and then they start triangulating the child or the children in there. We see it all the time. So even people with the best intentions can get off track. So a marriage and family therapist can really help through that divorce process. So I hope that helps you, Rita, in the sense that, yeah, you could certainly go for this discernment, and a lot of times it is very difficult when your partner is still wanting to work on it and you don't. But as you said, you're 47 years old and you want to, you have the next half of your life, and staying unfulfilled is not necessarily a good proposition either. So a marriage and family therapist or a family psychologist could certainly help you with that. And thank you for writing in. We have time for one more before the
Go
break?
ahead, yeah.
Okay, now this one comes from Tracy, also in Louisville. Dr. Eli, I've heard you say now that marriage and family therapists work with individuals just as often as they do with couples or families. So if this is true, could marriage and family therapists, we abbreviate that MFT, could MFTs also see teens? Because I have a 16-year-old daughter. She's really quiet, and I fear she's depressed. Over the past 7 weeks with no school, she spends most of her time in her room. I can't tell if she's mad at me for prior relationships or my work schedule, or if she just feels socially rejected. I can't get her to talk to me, so maybe I can get her to talk with a professional. How can I get her to go? Please help.
Yeah,
so you were mentioning
another good
teenagers.
question. I see a lot of teenagers.
Yes, how do you get a teenager? I'll give you my opinion in a second, but how do you get a teenager on board if you're just a parent and they're not talking to you? So you don't know if they're depressed or if they're angry at you or what. How do you get them to talk to you, much less get them in to see someone?
Well,
like
a lot of
you?
times, don't you think, Dr. Karam, I end up seeing the parents, for example, several times, and you find out that there's a lot of destructive behavior the parents are doing. And when you get that straightened out, it's amazing how much better the child does.
Yeah, look, no kid says, give me structure. I want structure. But every child needs that, whether you're a young or you're a teenager. So I do agree with that sometimes parents, they want to drop the kid off, and they say, fix my kid.
Exactly.
And when we say it doesn't work that way. In fact, if I'm going to work with a teenager, I'm going to do it in the context of the whole family. So, yeah, I got to know what's going on at school. I got to know what's going on with their friends. But I certainly, as you said, I got to know what's going on with their parents. So one thing you could do, first of all, Mom, for sending that in, Tracy. Tracy, you could first be able, first of all, to look kind of what's going on with you, kind of assess your own balance and structure, and be prepared if you're going to take your daughter in that that could come up. So, and then you could frame it a couple different ways. First of all, you could just ask her what's going on. A lot of parents won't ask their children, or when they do ask their children, it's in an accusatory way. Well, where did you do with this? Why won't you leave your room? It's not in a way that would be conducive for a teenager or anybody to respond. So you can't come in intense. And I always say, rather than telling your kid what to do, come in from what we call a one-down position. Ask them what's going on. Hey, I noticed you're spending time in your room, and lead with that primary emotion versus the anger, the frustration. I'm worried about you. I wonder if you're lonely, or what's your plan? We have a month left before school starts again. What are you going to do to get out? How have you been talking to your friends? A lot of time parents assume what's going on, especially now with all this technology. We talk about streaming the show, but most times teenagers now will tell you, no, I'm doing well socially. But what they're saying is, they're using Twitter, they're texting, they're not really seeing anyone face to face. We can talk to that after we get back to break. So you're listening to Dr. Stan and Dr. Eli taking your calls and answering your emails.
571-0970. We love hearing from you. Dr. Eli Karam, I'm Dr. Stan Frager. We're here for you, so give us a call, and we'll talk some more about what it takes to make a marriage work. Here with Dr. Eli Karam, I'm Stan Frager. It's always great to have you with us. And, getting back to some things, I know that well-intended therapists, and particularly if you're faith-based, it's almost like, well, the marriage should stay together no matter what.
That's right. And
you're killing me, Doctor.
I had to move my mic there. I'm sorry. Stay together no matter what. And a lot of people believe that. And again, there are certain situations where certainly we don't believe that. When we talk about safety, obviously people think of physical safety. If a relationship is not physically safe, many times marriage or couples counseling is counterindicated, and we want to get that individual, the abused partner, into a safe spot, help them put together a plan. We certainly.
And abuse isn't always physical.
No,
it could be mental and emotional.
Exactly, and those are equally damaging. So in a situation like that, when we have what we call an intimate terrorist, which is about 95% of the time a male, we want to get that other partner, like we said, into a safe situation, have them have a plan. Certainly marriage and family therapists can help with that, and you want to build up if you're in a situation like that. And sometimes we get calls about a situation like that. You certainly, that's not when you would want to include your partner. You want to lean on other family members or friends to try to get out of that situation, get you into a safe place, a woman's shelter, and help you put together a plan.
Yeah, a safe plan.
Exactly. There's some other times we wouldn't do couples therapy, and that's if someone had an active addiction. And even if they were well-intentioned, if they had an alcohol or drug problem, you would certainly want to get that under control first.
That's our topic next week, by the way.
Perfect. Let's plug it. Who you got?
Loving, when you're in love with an addict.
That's right. And it's another reason they tell people, with people that meet in rehab and they have these strong connections, they don't want them forming relationships as well. But yeah, if you have someone that has an addiction, if they love you and they're committed towards getting control of that, they definitely want to have a plan with that. And we have some great models, empirically supported models in the field, specifically behavioral couples therapy for alcohol. O'Farrell and Falls Stewart, there are a couple of researchers / clinicians that have a kind of a model working with somebody, one partner, both partners, but that part of that model means that people have to have their active addiction under control, have to have other supports, including 12 steps, other checks and balances that help them to do the couples work. So that's another.
Speaking of couples work, what do you think about? I've had clients come in and do a lot of marriage counseling as well, and they come in and it gets back to interviewing your therapist before you get involved with one to help you. The therapist is telling them, we're going to have this encounter weekend,
mm-hmm.
bare your soul, tell everything, then you'll never have any secrets, and tell the other person everything that ever happened so that You're totally open.
Yes. So
I have seen such disaster things sometimes
Right,
happen.
you have.
Now, sometimes that can work, but boy, oh boy, is that a tightrope to walk.
Yeah, wow, that you have a lot in that question. So let's take the different parts of that. First of all, this idea of an encounter weekend, which is very popular over the last 10 to 15 years or so. Again, if you're going to encounter weekend like that, you want to make sure, is it a premarital? Is it for couples kind of on the brink? You want to know the type of encounter weekend. And also, it's one thing if you're bearing your soul to your partner. It's another thing if you're doing it a group full of other people or a therapist or a group facilitator that you don't know that well. So this idea in committed relationships, sometimes people think showing your vulnerability is a weak or unattractive quality. However, probably nothing greater you can do in a committed long-term relationship than be able to show your partner not only your competencies, but also what your fears, your worries, and know that they're still going to be there for you, that they can kind of hold it. And this idea of being interdependent, I really like that, Dr. Stan, for couples, in the sense that you need to be strong, need to be able to venture out, do your own thing. But being interdependent also means you can come back to your safe base, your partner, when you're at your worst, when you've had a rough day. So, and that is not needy or weak. That being said, if you let it all out before you really know that therapist or know your partner, that can be, as you said, disastrous. So you want to be able to show that vulnerability in kind of graduated doses. You have to have these other couple skills around fair fighting, around emotional regulation. You want to have a lot of these skills in place before you let it all hang out there. So some inexperienced couple therapist might encourage their couples, their spouses, to do that without having the skills to do it first. So we would say when you're working with a couples therapist, you want to know, what is their background with couples? Have they been specifically trained? How much experience do they have doing it? And you really want your partner, this is an email we also had that I can summarize it that you mentioned, you want both people to buy in. So a lot of times if you're the female and you're driving going to therapy, you really want your partner, your spouse, your husband to take some ownership in that. So you want them to get online with you, make that contact with the therapist, whether it be a male or female therapist. You want them to have some stake in that, be an active participant. Getting your partner on board, very important in couples therapy. Should we go to another one?
Go ahead.
Okay, this one comes up a lot too. I'll be interested for your take on these, because I brought these in. Dr. Stan and I are friends, but he hasn't seen any of these. And I get this one a lot about ADD, Dr. Stan, and maybe you weigh in on this. So my fiance and I recently moved in together. This is from Charlotte, also in Louisville. So Charlotte moved in with her fiance. I was aware of his ADD diagnosis from the beginning of our relationship, but it really didn't bother me at first, as I saw him as a very creative and passionate man. Now that I'm living with him, though, I'm at my wit's end. He is a slob, and then he complains when I try to clean up what he calls his sacred space. He starts many different projects at once around the house without fully completing any of them. He uses his ADD as an excuse for everything, including cutting me off mid-sentence when I am trying to communicate my frustrations to him. Please help. What do you think about attention deficit disorder, ADD, and how it functions in a relationship, Dr. Stan?
It is real.
Yep.
It is real. And there's therapy and there's also medication.
Yes. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. For true ADD, it is behavior, but it's also biological kind of constraint, as we say. So whether it be these popular medications, right now the top three most popular are probably Vyvanse, Adderall, and Ritalin, and those are stimulant-based amphetamines, but they have a paradoxical effect on someone that has ADD.
I mean, that's always fascinating.
Yeah, isn't it?
I mean, here's people very busy, constantly doing stuff, can't sit still, and someone came up with the idea, well, let's give them a stimulant.
Yeah.
So, and what's an interesting test, though, is if you don't have ADD, then you find that drugs like that will actually keep the person up all night.
Yeah.
And they have trouble sleeping, et cetera, et cetera. People who have ADD and take it, it just calms them down. I mean, it blows me away. A good friend of mine was an assistant scoutmaster in our scout troop, and he loved to sit up at night with a big pot of coffee, and he would drink. We'd sit around a campfire, and he would sit there and drink a pot of coffee, not decaf, coffee.
Fully loaded, yeah.
Fully loaded, that's it. And then go right to bed and, just knock himself out. If I had a cup of coffee, I'm up all night long.
Yeah, and people with ADHD, as I said, it works in this paradoxical way. As you said, it actually calms them down, focuses them, regulates them. But if you're in a marriage like that and you don't have that, your brain doesn't work that way, it can be very disconcerting and very frustrating to you. So everything you say in here, Charlotte, certainly working with couples where one partner has this, I can relate to that. So, and you talk about what he calls his sacred space. A lot of times one tip I can give you in ADHD marriages is hopefully your living space is big enough, your home or whatever, that you can give your fiance one space that's just his. And even if it looks like it's not organized at all for you, it's in his what he calls his own kind of order and his own idiosyncratic way of doing things. So whether that be his drawer or his actual office space or whatever, let him have his one space and then really try to have the rest of the house in a way that is organized for everybody else. The other thing you can do, you can read. There's a lot of great books out there. One for adult ADHD is called Driven to Distraction. You can. There's also lots of books written for spouses of ADHD people, and these can help you as far as developing some coping strategies. But have your fiance educate you and make sure certainly to kind of train the brain. Obviously, the right medication is important to go with on these behavior things, and just frame it in a way that, again, rather than being frustrated, that you care about him and you want to make this new life you're going to have together better. So, thanks for the call.
There you go. 571-0970 puts you right here. I'm Dr. Stan Frager with Dr. Eli Karam, talking about issues of relationships, marriage, and all that good thing. Talking about it can not only help you, but it helps other people as well. So give us a call. I'll be right back.
Matter most to you. Call now, 571-0970.
And welcome, Dr. Eli Karam. Dr. Karam, let's take another one of our emails.
Sure. Here's one from Sarah, and she is in E-Town, Elizabethtown, Kentucky. She says, my husband's lack of effort in our marriage is killing me. He'd rather be downstairs in front of the TV instead of spending time with me. My anger towards him is turning me into someone I hardly recognize when I look in the mirror. I'm furious with him, but would be embarrassed if others saw me get this out of control. What can I do to get his attention and control my emotions without having to resort to such extreme moods?
I don't know about you, but I've heard that many times now.
Sure.
People, more than watching TV, it's getting on the computer.
In front of some type of screen, yeah.
They'll go downstairs or they'll go somewhere, and sometimes in the same room, but they'll get locked into their computer.
Right.
And they don't talk to their spouse.
That's right. So you could literally see someone every evening, every morning, but feel like a stranger to them because you're not talking. No
connection.
That's right. You're not talking. And so in a lot of these long-term marriages, marriage and family therapists, that's exactly what they see. It's not this big catastrophic event or argument that's caused them to come in. It is this slow decline in connection because they are not prioritizing time. And what happens is, we see these common patterns. And if you're in what I call the bubble of your own relationship, sitting at home listening to this, you might think it's just like you, and it's embarrassing. That's why these emails are very important, as Stan was saying earlier, and they kind of normalize things that, you're not alone in this. So this is a very common dynamic.
You got a lot of company on this one.
That's right. So, you feel lonely in your marriage. And what happens is you start complaining and you get angry, and the more you pursue your partner, the more they shut down. So we call that demand withdrawal pattern, pursuer distancer, probably the most common pattern couples therapists when they're working with relationships. So how do we work with that? Well, first of all, we got to prioritize the connection. As we said earlier, people prioritize doctor's appointments. They prioritize their kids' games, academic events, but they don't prioritize each other. So this idea of protected time, some people call it date night, that's very, very important, first of all. You have to have dedicated time for the couple.
Well, I think the couple, the person reads it as, if you cared about me, if you loved me, you would spend time with me.
Exactly.
And it's read as, you must not love me because you don't
Right.
spend any time.
Right. So going back to, I always like to point out to couples, just couple and family therapists, they do a lot of psychoeducation. So the difference between primary and secondary emotion. So when you come in and your partner and say, you're ignoring me, you're always in front of that TV is more important than me, you know, expletive. What happens is that your partner hears intensity and they shut down right away. And that, when we think of anger and frustration, people think that's a primary emotion, but it's not. It's really what we call a secondary emotion. It's a smokescreen. Really what's primary is what you were saying, what's under that. It is loneliness. It is insecurity. So how we teach couples, instead of that, what John Gottman would call a harsh startup, what we teach couples to do is a softer startup, leading with that primary emotion. And, you know, I'm lonely. I really miss you. Instead of that TV, I wish we could just, you know, catch up and talk, or I really want to share this with you. Yeah, I really want to share this with you, because couples go on autopilot. And now, especially with the, you know, the smartphone, we're sitting right here and you can check us out on YouTube live streaming right now. And people use their phones all the time. I can tell you, more than TV, more than anything else, the cell phone, the smartphone, one of life's great modern technology, it's killing a lot of relationships, though, whether it's your Candy Crush or whether it is your tweeting back and forth, or a lot of people, I'll tell you, and you probably experienced this too, a lot of couples get into trouble with their using their cell phone for porn. And you could use your cell phone for anything now. So anything can be a block for that relationship. So put the phones away, use the soft startup, focus on you know, your relationship. And this is the phones now. People are using them as their alarm clocks. So people are going to bed with them too. We find couples have these points of connection. All the research says, in these long-term relationships, the longitudinal research that tracks the masters of marriage versus the disasters, if you will. And the masters of marriage, you know, they might go on trips, they might get each other gifts, but that is really secondary to what they call the magic 15 minutes a day. Magic 15 minutes a day, it's before you leave in the morning, Dr. Stan. It's reunion at the end of the day, and it's before you go to sleep at night. It's those 15 minutes of connection with your partner. And that's how you know, get knowledge of your partner's world, what's going on, so you really know them. You're not just seeing them and being kind of a present, just coexisting, if you will. You're really knowing your partner.
Sometimes you're physically present, but not really there.
That's right. And that's how, you know, we think of physical intimacy is great, and certainly you got to have it. But most people in long-term relationships, they're not even going to get to the sex until they feel emotionally connected. So that's where there can be some good uses of technology. If you send your partner, I'm looking at my phone right now. If you send your partner an encouraging text, I got an encouraging text from my wife earlier today, and that, you know, that kind of makes your day. It makes you excited to come home. What you shouldn't do is get into a long argument on text. What you shouldn't do is find distractions from blocking this connection with your partner. But if you build connection during the day, it leads to these points of connection. So every couple needs that. And if you're listening to this and you feel disconnected from your partner, you know, it's a two-way street. I've always say this too. It's one of my favorite things to tell couples. They come in, going back to finding your therapist. A lot of people, they want the therapist to be the referee, the judge, and the jury.
Oh yeah, tell him he's wrong.
Tell him he's wrong. It's fix my partner, fix my spouse. I'm good. I'm here. You tell him what's wrong. Let's pay somebody to tell me that I'm right. I say it doesn't work that way. I've never seen any relationship where someone is 100% of the blame. It just does not work that way. It is a couple cycle. Successful couples, we know, I'm a psychotherapy researcher, successful couples do three things. They understand their cycle, and they that it's not just one person. They are able to take a step back, call a timeout in time, what we call stand meta to their process, which means look at their part. So they're not blaming their partner for everything. They look at their part. So if they're the pursuer, they know the more they pursue, the more their partner shuts down, in that example from a couple minutes ago. And then they take responsibility for their part, and they're willing to change their part. They're not going to change their partner. They can only change their reaction. Successful couples, people think couples therapy is all about problem solving, and sometimes it is, but you know, really only 31% of couple problems are actually solvable. The research says most things that happened years ago, we can't go back and change it. You know, I can't fix my 5th anniversary no matter how much I try, but I don't want to ruin the next one, so I got to move forward. I got to.
How many times have you heard? Well, I can forgive them, but I can't forget.
Right.
And then they want to use that as a club for the next 20
exactly.
years.
So the successful couples, you got it. The successful couples learn to these two skills, acceptance and tolerance. They learn acceptance and tolerance skills for those things that are not changeable, what we call perpetual problems. So, those are the successful couples. You got to move forward. And if you can do that and you have a partner that's willing to do that too, that's a good sign and a good use of a venue like couples therapy. All right, I know we're running out of time. Let me quickly get to one more. Let's see here. This is a good one. My husband has recently lost 30 pounds and has gotten into extremely good shape. I also noticed that he is spending extra time grooming himself. I'm usually a self-confident woman, and he's never given me any reason not to trust him in the past. I've wanted him to make some of these changes for a while now, but why do I feel less than secure with him lately? How can I talk to him about this without starting a fight? So, Dr. Stan, what would most people think if your spouse makes a lot of physical changes, grooming themselves?
That they've got a boyfriend or girlfriend.
That's right. So that is a normal reaction to insecurity. So instead of going from 0 to 10 and putting yourself into orbit with that, I would slow it down. And again, it sounds like you've always been a confident person before. This is Kim who sends in this email. She doesn't say where she's from, but Kim, I would go back instead of getting all amped up like that. I would focus on what we've been saying this hour and kind of connect to your partner instead of jumping to conclusions. Be curious. Try to gain knowledge. Why is that important to him now? Instead of coming at him in a way that's going to shut him down. The disclaimer, I don't want to start a fight. You've given me no reason not to trust you, but I'm feeling a little insecure. You looking really good, and I'm just wondering
and they're not
what's
feeling
going
good
on
about the way they look.
That's right. And perhaps in starting that conversation in a non-defensive way, there's a chance for a point of connection. There's a chance to learn more about what's going on with your partner.
And also to work out together.
That's right.
To walk together.
There comes the shared experience that we talked about. If you do that conversation right out of that, if your partner doesn't want to make space for you, that's not a good sign. But if you put a request out there, a request, I always say, Dr. Stan, is different than a demand. It sounds different. A request,
Except sometimes it's couch. My wife's favorite expression is, you want to go out to dinner tonight, don't you? No. You want to go visit my mom tonight with me, right? Yeah, right, honey.
Right. And if you frame it in that, if you frame the request why it's important to you, so in this example, hey, I am feeling insecure. You're looking great lately. Could you show me your workout routine? Or could we go somewhere together? I feel like I haven't gotten to talk to you in a while, and I feel like you're spending more time on other things, and I really like to spend some time with you. And if you frame it that way, and if a relationship especially has a good past, it's really hard to not accommodate that. But that's
and appreciating your partner.
Yeah,
the
right.
favorite expression around our house. My wife's name is Patty, and the favorite expression is "Thank God for Patty," TGFP. So that's all I can say. She's been helping me out, taking good care of some physical
And I know
challenges.
Patty. She's a good woman,
Sweet.
and you
Lucky man.
Yeah, and you got to have. Lots of times couples move. They've created this culture of criticism, and really what you're talking about is the antidote to that, the buffer, a culture of appreciation. Look, I don't care if you're needy or not. Everybody likes to know what they do well that helps the relationship work. So if you can feed that back to your partner, especially in an authentic way. I mean, people have pretty good BS detectors in the sense that if they give an inauthentic compliment,
right,
most people can pick up on that, especially when you've been in a relationship for a long time. So if you make authentic compliments for what your partner does well. My wife is an excellent mother, and she also really takes care of the house well. So when I do come home and those magic 15 minutes or whatever, I don't have to worry about it. All the stuff's taken care of. I can come home, de-stress from my long day, and just focus on my wife and my kids, which is really nice. So when I tell my wife she does that well, it does help. It does prime the pump for connection going on.
And it's very sincere.
Yeah, it is.
And it does make it different.
It does make my life a lot easier.
Dr. Karam, the time has flown. Again, thanks for coming by and visiting with our family. You're part of our Sunday night family.
Well, you're the man, and I always, again, going back years and now currently, value my relationship with you, and you are authentic, and that is part of the reason you've connected with so many people, and that we are friends and colleagues.
Thank
so
you.
I appreciate all the time we spend together.
Great having you with me. We want to thank our producer, Alan Jenkins, and our assistant producer, David Green. These guys really do a great job helping us. Jeremy Kurtzinger on the board there. Thank you, Jeremy, for keeping us rolling. David Rackles, program director here at Salem Broadcasting, and always supporting us. Keep it right here, 10 o'clock, Resistance Radio with Jim Coyle.